Welcome back to the Happiness Minute. It's been a while since our last episode, and honestly, I think that ties perfectly into today's topic, which is burnout. Sometimes we all need to step back, take a pause, and give ourselves permission to rest. In this episode, we're diving into something that so many of us are quietly struggling with. Maybe you felt it, waking up exhausted, running on empty, feeling like even the simplest tasks are overwhelming. Burnout is more common than we think. My guest today knows this better than most. Liz is a medically qualified doctor with a PhD who transitioned from women's health into holistic health coaching. She's deeply passionate about empowering women to prioritize their health and well being, and she has a wealth of experience from balancing blood sugar and hormones to supporting gut and immune health. But what makes Liz's story even more powerful is that she's been through burnout herself. So, as we ease back into this podcast after a little break, I can't think of a more fitting conversation. Today, we'll talk about what burnout really is, how to spot the signs, and most importantly, what we can do to heal and prevent it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Happiness Minute. And we have a very special guest today. Her name is Liz. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi there. Very well, thank you.
Okay. Liz, before anything else, can you tell our listeners and our viewers about yourself and what you do?
Of course, and thank you for having me here today. Yes, I'm Liz, and I help women prioritize themselves as their number one priority. So I work as a health coach, I teach Pilates, I teach face yoga, and I'm a Reiki healer as well.
Okay, cool. I guess like today, we're going to be discussing burnout because I think in our modern world, it's a common thing, and I think people know it anyway. It's quite a common thing because we work longer hours, we look at our phones longer, we do social media. It feels that we don't sleep at all. So I think this is a very topical topic at the moment, and it's nice for you to come along and discuss it in our podcast. So my very first question to you is that I know we discussed it initially, is that what's your personal experience with burnout? Because I remember we sort of like touched on it.
Yeah, so I have been through burnout personally. I used to work as a medical doctor. I was an obstetrician and gynecologist. I worked in the NHS for around about 11 years. And I left that job about 6 years ago now, basically as a result of burnout. So burnout is hugely common now. It's and you're right, it is a result of these really highly stressful lives that we all lead. We're all in this constant fight or flight mode, and I think that's something that is really important to speak about at some point, in this, how the autonomic nervous system works and this sympathetic overdrive that we all find ourselves in because of societal pressures. So for me, I was working ridiculously long hours in a very, very stressful job. I had 3 young children at home who all had high needs around their care, and then the normal life that everyone needs to live.
So it's a gradual
well.
build-up then. The burnout is a gradual build-up.
This is it. It's very uncommon for there to be this one, devastating event that leads to burnout. As you say, it's this gradual build up over time. And I think this is part of the problem as well, in that people, they're getting through the day, but they're only just getting through the day, and they just sort of keep going. And, they're like, I'm fine. But feeling fine isn't really that great, is it?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's that constant build up, that constant exposure to stressful situations. So yes, for me, I had this overwhelming exhaustion. I had absolutely no energy. I wasn't sleeping at all. And, even those times when I did manage to sleep, I'd wake up in this cold sweat. I would be worrying. The anxiety was absolutely overwhelming. I literally worried about everything, every decision I made at work. I would come home and I'd be there checking up on the hospital system, like what was happening with these patients. And I could just never step away from that job. I had like these overwhelming feelings of panic at work. I had this sense of hopelessness, that something external had to change for me to start feeling better. And again, I think that's really hard because nothing external was going to change. It was just going to keep going on and on and on. And it had to be me that made that change, made that decision that I wasn't going to keep living like that anymore.
Yeah, because you mentioned something about, like these are like the experiences that you had. So are this the early signs or red flags that you considered the start of a burnout? Are there other mores that you think, in hindsight, are there other mores that are sort of like, yeah, I think those are like initial signs. They're red flags. You have some of them?
Absolutely. And I think at the time I didn't realize that it was burnout. As I said, I was getting through every day. I was fine. And it's only when I look back that I realized that I wasn't fine at all. It's not okay just to get through the day, to be crying every day because you're so overwhelmed and exhausted, to not be sleeping at all. And burnout can manifest in different people in lots and lots of different ways. So it's exhaustion, it's sleep disturbances like I had, it's lack of energy, but it's also things like headaches, muscle and joint pain,
Migraines.
loss of appetite, migraines, exactly. Overwhelm, lack of motivation, loss of interest in whatever it is that you used to enjoy. Feeling detached, feeling isolated from other people is a huge one for lots of people in burnout. Not being able to focus, not being as productive at work, being really short-tempered. All these things are those, red flags that people might find that they are experiencing. It doesn't necessarily mean they are in burnout, but it might be signs that they are heading in that direction. Because and burnout is, there's no sort of official diagnosis as such. It's physical, it's emotional, it's mental exhaustion, and it's a combination of all of these different experiences and signs that people may be experiencing, but everyone will experience it in a different way.
I think like you're right, actually. And there's not one singular definition of what it is. But I guess I want to understand it a bit more. Um, the difference, because you mentioned exhaustion. There's also stress. How is it different from burnout? Because they're I think they're different in a way, or maybe the stress and exhaustion are signs, but let me know.
No, totally. And I think for me, the distinction is that stress is a short-term thing. Absolutely, it can have a huge impact on your emotions, on your energy, on your sleep, but ultimately you still are able to function. And it tends to be, something has happened that is stressful to you in the short term. You feel like that way for a short period of time and then you recover. I think burnout is more that long term, that chronic state of stress. And I think this is where it's really important to start understanding the autonomic nervous system. And so the autonomic nervous system is, evolutionary. It's incredibly important. We need this to function. So we have our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight response. And this kicks in, in those stressful situations. And we need that, If we think back to our ancestors, if we needed to run away from a predator, if we needed to catch food, we needed that fight or flight response to raise our heart rate, to raise our respiratory rate, to pump blood to our muscles so that we could respond and we could act quickly. The issue comes when, in society as it is now, we have this constant stressors in our lives, and we are constantly in this overwhelm, this fight or flight response, and our bodies are just not adapted to be able to deal with that, and our bodies therefore don't function properly. So we have, to balance this, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is what you might have heard called your rest and digest system. So it's so crucial for people to activate that parasympathetic nervous system whenever they can. And there's different ways of doing that. But I think just having that understanding that when you have these constant stresses in your life, you are going into that sympathetic overdrive, and that is what is really difficult for your body to cope, and that is why you can't function in the long term with those stressful experiences going on.
Yeah, because I guess like in terms of your function, like during the whole time, do you think societal and also workplace expectations and feed into that, like the burnout?
Absolutely. And so actually the WHO, the World Health Organization, they recognize burnout as an occupational phenomenon. So, they attribute this to something related to work. So I think, work pressures absolutely have a huge impact on burnout. But I think, more understanding is there now that it's not just work, it is every day that plays into it, and that definition hasn't quite sort of matched up with that yet. But totally, there's this huge pressure on everyone in society, and maybe we can say particularly on women to be achieving it all, doing everything at work, doing everything at home, this
looking good.
Looking good, exactly. And this sandwich generation that some of us are in, we've got young children, but we've also got parents and that need looking after, and it's overwhelming. There just isn't enough time in the day. And then where do you come into that? And I think that's my ultimate message, is actually you need to be your number one priority so that you can manage everything else that you have to.
And I think there's also this constant need to be perfect and to achieve something that contributes to being burnt out. Like you said, especially with women, we see it all the time. At the moment with social media, you need to look at as perfect as you can. Like it's a curated version of you. And I think it does disservice totally, and makes the burnout like happen quickly than normal. I don't know your thoughts about that.
I totally agree. I think social media has had a massive part to play in that. And obviously, everyone is constantly comparing their lives to everyone else's, curated lives that they see online. It's not real life, but it's human nature. You do compare yourself. I hope things are getting better. I think there is a lot more content out there now about people talking about the behind the scenes. People are talking about, the messiness to their lives, to their businesses. And I hope that is a move in the right direction. And I think, people do have more awareness now that it is a curated, set of experiences that they are seeing. Certainly, people, I think, of my generation and age understand that. And I really hope that, children today can see that as well. And I think it's incredibly important that we teach our children that they need to look after themselves, that they need to not, take everything on social media as they see it, to question everything, and ultimately to look after themselves.
Yeah, you a while ago you mentioned, of course, you had burnout, but I think it's nice to discuss as well your road to recovery and your healing. For you, what was the turning point in terms of your recovery from it? And what sort of things that you did that changed and or helped you in healing and regaining a sense of balance?
Yeah. So for me, the trigger was I was working a night shift on my daughter's birthday. I didn't see her on her birthday at all. And I was in the hospital thinking about all the time, all the energy, all the effort that I put into my career that I was good at. And then I had this sort of mindset shift, and I was like, I am only going to be putting in 10, 20, 30 times the energy, the time, the effort more if I stay in this job. How many more, things am I going to be missing with my family if I stay in this job? And I'm not saying to anyone that they need to do anything as drastic as I did and leave their jobs, but for me that was the right thing to do. So I got home from that night shift, and again, it wasn't a snap decision. It's about 5 years I think I'd been thinking about, is this right for me? It was, but that decision was, yes, this is final, I'm doing it. I went home and I wrote my letter of resignation. And obviously that wasn't the end of burnout for me, but that was definitely the start of, something new. And yeah, so I went from full-time working mum to full-time stay-at-home mum, and that was a huge change for me. And I lost who I was, my identity, when I wasn't working as a doctor. So it wasn't a quick recovery at all, but I absolutely started making changes to my lifestyle that made me feel good. So, what I was eating, how I was exercising, my mindset, how I was, structuring my day, all of these things completely radically changed. And in terms of, a job, I didn't want to be in health and wellness anymore. I was like, I'm done. I have given my all. I wanted to, make it work, and I couldn't. And I was like, I've got to step away. But after a few years, I just got drawn back into it. And I think it was knowing that I had been through this experience and I had got better, and wanting to share everything that I'd learned. Like, I've learned so much since, not being a doctor, that I wish I'd known when I was a doctor, how important gut health is and things like that. I had no idea. So I was like, I want to be able to share this with other people, because I want to help people, stop themselves from getting where I was, because it's a really challenging situation to be in.
Yeah, you mentioned lifestyle changes as well. So definitely in terms of the food that you eat, you've changed it as well. Exercise, what sort of exercise did, because I know you're doing, like, for example, you're teaching Pilates and that sort of thing. What sort of exercise helped you during this
Yeah.
journey?
So exercise is really interesting. And again, I think this is something that I've learned over the last few years. For me, at least, I was taught that exercise needed to be really high impact. You needed to be getting hot and sweaty and out of breath, or you hadn't worked out properly. And that is not true. So research is now saying that actually you should be splitting the exercise you do. And I'm not even calling it exercise anymore, movement. Movement is much more important. 80% of your movement should be low intensity, and only 20% that high intensity. So it absolutely does not have to be HIIT workouts, things like walking, things like yoga, things like Pilates are so much better for you. And this goes back to what I was saying about the sympathetic nervous system. So these high impact exercises are a stressor for your body. They will put your body into that fight or flight response. If you're already in that fight or flight response all the time, it's not good. You're just making things worse. And actually, some people might have the goal of losing weight, and they're really going for it with these high impact exercises, and they don't see that weight loss, and that is because they are in sympathetic overdrive. all the time. And in that state, your body will store fat around your abdomen. So I just find it so interesting. So absolutely, movement incredibly
It's important,
important,
yeah.
but it really does not have to be what you might sort of traditionally have thought of as exercise. Just getting out and having a walk every day is
It's
going
good.
to be really, really good for you.
Yeah. I try for my case because I did have a health scare a long time ago. And one of these things that mentally you're not at that stage sometimes when you're in that. What helped me actually is walking, because you can't really do like high impact exercises. Walking and also Pilates. I like Pilates a lot actually. so so it does help, I guess, with the burnout. And in terms of like mental health, I do believe like movement, like you said, it's actually quite good in doing that and making
Definitely.
sure you don't fall into that burnout stage.
Yeah, and walking as well, getting outside, there's benefits from being out in nature as well. So you're ticking that box as well. And the other thing, if you can go for a walk with somebody else, even
Mhm.
better. Leave your phone at home. That's my other message. Do
Yeah.
not have your phone with you. But community and interactions with other people are all hugely beneficial for helping in terms of general wellness and helping you to avoid getting into that burnout state. So absolutely, go for a walk outside with someone else, and that's going to be hugely beneficial.
Okay, I guess like now I'm actually thinking about prevention of a burnout. So what sort of things can you tell people who feels that they're on that edge already having a burnout? What
Mm.
sort of things that you can tell them?
So I think acknowledging that you're not okay is step one, and maybe sharing that with somebody else, telling someone that actually I don't think I'm okay at the moment. That is hugely, hugely powerful. I think making sure you do find that time to prioritize yourself in whatever way that is that works for you. Making sure you eat well, and there's a huge amount around nutrition and what is useful, but there are some basics that will be really, really helpful. So making sure you eat 3 meals a day, avoiding your ultra processed foods, cutting down on caffeine, cutting down on alcohol. All of these types of things are going to help you feel better. Movement, as we've talked about, that's going to be really beneficial as well. And then just again having some awareness, as I keep talking about it, but the
Yeah,
autonomic
it's
nervous
important. Yeah.
system, and finding those ways that you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So breathing techniques are an amazing way to activate that system. And a lot of clients I work with, we talk about like the morning routine and the evening routine. And if you can just bookend your day with that short, routine, even if it's 10 minutes, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. That's really, really going to help. So for example, in the morning, before you check your phone, have a glass of water, do 10 belly breaths, which is where you breathe into your abdomen. You feel your abdomen rise and fall. That activates your vagus nerve, which is your big parasympathetic nerve, which goes through your diaphragm. That's going to really help. And if you can get outside in daylight, first thing in the morning, that's going to help set that circadian rhythm and help you sleep better in the evening. And then again, at the end of the day, no phones, no screens, ideally for, half an hour if you can manage it before bed. And again, do that belly breath at the end of the day. Just get yourself into that parasympathetic state before you go to sleep. Things like gratitude, you don't need to write it down. Just think of 1 or 2 things that you are grateful for that day. And that really does help that mindset shift. And if you go to bed in that way, you're more likely to wake up the next day feeling like that as well. I feel like that was a lot of things, but I.
Oh no, it's actually good tips. And also because this is a common thing now that's happening, and people are always looking for things to make themselves, better and not go into burnout. One of the things that I'm actually thinking just now is that of course, for example, you don't have burnout anymore, but how can you protect yourself from slipping into burnout again? Do you have some tips that you can impart to our listeners?
Definitely. And yes, and I've made a huge amount of changes to my lifestyle, but I still have those days where I do feel overwhelmed, I do feel frazzled, and I do feel like I can't keep on top of things. But those are the days where I catch myself and I'm like, actually, this is the time I need a break. And I run my own businesses now, and as when you're in that situation, it's really hard because you feel like you've got to keep going or your business is going to fail. And actually, that is not true at all, because if you burn out, your business is going to fail. So for me, when I have those days where I'm feeling frazzled and overwhelmed, I take a step back. I put work aside and I focus on me. And for me, I love going for a swim. So I do sort of outdoor swimming. I love that. Really good for activating your parasympathetic nervous system as well. I love, getting outside, going for a walk with the dog, spending time with my kids. So it is just identifying when you are starting to feel that you're on that slippery slope, and taking that step back. I've got some clients who have a sort of stress box. So when they do find that they're getting to that point, they go to their stress box and they've got things in there that they know are going to help them. So whether it's like essential oils, which some people can find really beneficial, or some supplements and things, people herbs and things like that people find useful, a candle, a book, things like that, just things that make you go, okay, this is me time now, and I'm going to take a break. And you're then so much more efficient, you're so much more productive, and in the long run, it's I think people think, oh, it's selfish, I can't take time out for myself. It is not selfish at all. It's strategic. You are going to succeed in the long run if you look after yourself.
Because health is wealth at the end of the day. You won't be able to do anything if you're sick.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess I have my second to the last question. So for you, when you look back, what would you tell your past self during that difficult time where you were in that burnout stage?
That it does get better, that I don't need to feel like that. And I think when you're stuck in that moment, you sort of feel like that's normal, and it's okay to feel rubbish every day, and it's okay that you're crying and not sleeping. You're just like, oh, it's just because of everything I've got to deal with, it's just normal. It's not, but it will get better. And there are I don't want to use the word easy, but there are realistic things that you can change in your life to make things better. And again, lots of people I work with have busy lives, and it's not about changing everything. It's about making those small changes that fit in with your lifestyle, and those little changes over time will build up to the big changes, and you will get to a point where you do enjoy every day, and it's not a struggle to get through each day.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz, for today. So my last question is to tell our listeners how they can get hold of you and reach you. And for example, they want to use your services, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so my business is Liz More Wellness. So I'm on Instagram as Liz More Wellness, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook as Liz More. I do have a wellness clarity guide, which I would love to share with your listeners. It's not burnout specific, but it is really, really useful for people who are feeling that little bit overwhelmed, that they know they need to start making some changes, but they don't really know where to start. So I would be happy to share that with your listeners, just to give people that starting point, if that would be helpful for anybody.
That would be great. Yeah. Okay. So I guess, like everyone, that's it for our podcast today. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. in our Happiness Minute podcast. So that's us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.